All right, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on the time zone you may be in, and welcome to a virtual Howard University. My name is Professor Javaune. I'm an associate professor of political science and also the founding director of Howard University's Center for Women, Gender, and Global Leadership. It's wonderful to have you all today to listen to a very important conversation, and a conversation that could be no less important than the very moments we are in now. And so I welcome you all to engage with our audience, to listen and to contribute to the discourse. And may our contributions be uplifting, encouraging, and moving towards gender equality for all. We stand as an HBCU in solidarity with all other HBCUs in the United States and others that may be located in the African diaspora, that we are committed to ensuring justice, equity, and that we are not going to give in to fear. And so we stand in solidarity with all other HBCUs to say this day that we will not back down and we will continue to push together for equality, justice, and for freedom from fear. So I would like to start off by giving a little background onto this program. We are gathered today to talk about HBCUs and how we can come together to promote gender equality through responsive leadership that engages with our communities. We are excited to be joined by Howard University President Frederick A.I. Wayne and two other HBCU presidents who we will be given proper introductions to in a few minutes. Howard University joined the UN Women HeForShe in April 2021. Under the leadership of Howard University President Frederick, Howard University committed to 3 goals under the UN Women HeForShe campaign. Goal 1 was to promote women and gender issues across Howard University campus. The second goal was to create opportunities to promote women in leadership at Howard universities. And the third goal was to help bring together HBCUs as we discuss issues that would promote gender equality. I am happy to say that under President Frederick's leadership, goals 1 and 2 have been happening at Howard before now. And today we are going to begin goal number 3, working backwards. And so this dialogue is going to be the beginning of many other presidential summits we are looking to host at Howard University and also at other HBCUs as we discuss ways in which we can promote gender equality. So I would like to now turn over and welcome our guests, and to say that the Center for Women, Gender, and Global Leadership is leading a movement to engage other HBCUs on gender equality. But we are not doing this on our own, and we cannot do this on our own. So I invite everyone to be part of it. We will hear from HBCU leaders, but most importantly, we will also hear from HBCU students on what they think and envision a gender equal campus to look like. So without taking much time, I invite you to sit back, relax, engage, enjoy, and let's renew our commitment to gender equality. I would now like to invite onto the virtual podium the UN Women representative, who is going to give us remarks from UN Women, and Aldijana Shishich is the Chief of Multi-Stakeholder Partnerships and Advisory Services at UN Women HeForShe. Aldijana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Professor Javaune, and thank you for college to having me, hosting me today. It's a great pleasure to be here, and congratulations on all your work that you have done so far with your goals 1 and 2, and that you are now engaging to achieve the goal 3 as well, which I have no doubt will be achieved, of course. And that is of the great importance, of the crucial importance, I would say, if we look at the data and what is happening in the world when it comes to gender equality. According to the World Economic Forum latest data, it will take us 257 years to achieve gender equality. So that number in itself tells us how crucial it is for all of us to get together and work on this issue. 90% and plus of all heads of government and Fortune 500 CEOs are male identifying. And we all know it is not secret and it is not news to all of us that men hold disproportionate level of power across cultures globally, but they also remain largely absent from the gender equality conversation. Similar to all the other human rights and social justice movements, gender equality requires action and allyship across all of us in society, as you rightly pointed out in your opening remarks. This is why UN Women created flagship initiative, and UN Women stands for the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality. And we created an initiative that is called HeForShe. It's a solidarity movement, an international platform that invites and engages men and boys to complement work of women's movement that has been done for years and for a long time, and to create an equal world for all of us. So to date, as a result, we have set up a bit of groundbreaking and new course to address this and to accelerate the progress with the launch of HeForShe. In 2014, the movement has built this movement of men and boys that got engaged together with women's movement and with UN Women and with other partners from private sector, from governments, civil society. It has built community of millions of activists across the globe and has been the subject of more than 3 billion conversations of on social media annually. And you know, these 3 billion conversations speak about also something very positive, which is about energy that is there, the will to change the world and create a gender equal world that we are trying to tap in and bring together with the work of the HeForShe. So over the past 5 years, we have worked very closely with partners to achieve the change. As I said, some governments like government of Iceland that has introduced equal pay for every single citizen, the government of Malawi, who outlawed child marriage, or PwC that has shifted from 18% to 47% of female representation on their board. So some of the big gains have been made. These are just some examples, of course. But building on this work, we want to grow unique ecosystem of partners and bring together a group of most ambitious leaders from across various communities, governments, academia, etc., etc. These partners will join or are joining forces with HeForShe to launch this new alliance, if I can call it that way, and develop a jointly call for scalable and shareable solutions for gender equality. These, as we call them, HeForShe champions, will spearhead transformative changes across countries, companies, campuses, like in your case, and communities, and to inspire many others, we hope, to follow a suit and demonstrate the value of us working together in accelerating the progress and creating the change and creating gender equal world. So in this context, I'm absolutely delighted that Howard University has already joined us in this HeForShe venture, and that I can officially welcome you on board in our partnership. Howard University is, as you said, with achieving your goal, already working on your goals 1 and 2, is already one of the very important partners or key partners, particularly from North America and the academic sector across our HeForShe Alliance. So we will be looking at the Howard University and holding the torch in the academia to change, to taking us forward to change. And of course, this could not be done without great support of your President Frederick. So I want to thank him personally for steady, fast support on gender equality work and for taking steps and strong stand in this space and on this issue. And I would love to recognize really you, Professor Japa, for your critical role in facilitating creation of this partnership, particularly over the last year. You only know how much work you have done, and we know how much you are crucial in creating this space and this opportunity for your students, as well as for many other students from other colleges and other universities to kind of follow your lead. And of course, we're delighted to learn that the exact areas of focus of Howard University, as you outlined them, to sustain and enhance opportunities for women leadership by 2026 and promote dialogue and programming around women, gender, and masculinities. And this event today is just a very clear example of how you do that. And of course, to mobilize historically Black colleges and universities across the USA and African diaspora to join you and to take the cue from your leadership. And today's event and conversation are just one step of going forward in what are going to be many, many steps and milestones that we are going to achieve together. So I just want to recognize, thank you again for everything, and recognize the leadership role that you will play, and you together with your students in advancing women leadership, and also understanding, very importantly, intersectional masculinities and what role they play in the changing the gender equality balance and the ecosystem that we are in right now. So thank you so much. And I look forward, this is just beginning, and I really, really look forward working with you more closely as we go forward. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sisich. This is a wonderful introduction to our partnership. And like you rightly said, there's a lot more work to be done. And where there's a will, there's a way. And so we are glad that we have leaders who have the will to do this. And so we will be able to go along the journey. It's my delight now to welcome onto the virtual podium a Howard University student, a political science graduating senior, Anthony Dorman, who has been part of the work in building the HeForShe group campaign at Howard University. Anthony is going to introduce our esteemed speakers. Anthony, over to you. Anthony, you're muted.
I apologize. I was saying thank you and good morning and welcome to our panelists and our attendees. Like Dr. Javaune mentioned, my name is Anthony Dorman. I'm a graduating senior at Howard University and the student coordinator, one of the student coordinators for the HeForShe movement. And it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panelists. First, we'd like to welcome Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick, who was appointed the 17th president of Howard University in 2014. He previously served as provost and chief academic officer. Most recently, the Howard University Board of Trustees selected Dr. Frederick to serve as the distinguished Charles R. Drew Professor of Surgery. A distinguished scholar and administrator, Dr. Frederick has advanced Howard University's commitment to student opportunity, academic innovation, public service, and fiscal stability. Now to our next distinguished panelist, Dr. Roslyn Clark Artis, who was unanimously appointed by the Board of Trustees as the 14th and first woman president of Benedict College on June 30th, 2017. Previously, Dr. Artis served as the 13th and first president of Florida Memorial University in Miami Gardens, Florida. Intentional, professional, and thoroughly committed to the proliferation and transformation of colleges and universities that serve underrepresented men and women of color. Dr. Artis' leadership has been recognized locally and nationally. And last but not least, Dr. Javaune Adams-Gaston, who is the 7th president of Norfolk State University. She began her tenure on June 24th, 2019. As president, she's committed to ensuring that Norfolk State University fulfills its mission as a HBCU for the modern world, and a university grounded by its heritage, focused on the future, and deeply committed to student success. Her vision is student success, opportunity access and affordability, and growth and sustainability. A strong advocate for collaboration and developing strategic partnerships with local, regional, and state stakeholders. Dr. Adams-Gaston is committed to cultivating strong connections with alumni and the community. We'd like to thank you all for being here again and in your contributions to promoting equal gender policies on your campus. And I'll pass the mic back to you, Dr. Javaune.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for those wonderful introductions. So it's my delight now to officially open the discussion. And we are delighted to have as our moderator today, Dean Danielle Holley-Walker from the Howard University School of Law. And Dean Holley-Walker's experience, knowledge, and practical interest in promoting social justice cannot be underscored. And at a time like today, where we have the announcement of who might be going next onto the Supreme Court of the United States, at a time when we are rounding up Black History Month, and also moving towards Women's History Month, I am delighted to hand over the virtual mic to Dean Holley-Walker.
Thank you so much, Dr. Javaune. I'm just honored to be here today with my president, Dr. Frederick, with Dr. Adams-Gaston, and Dr. Artis will join us shortly. She is in a board meeting right now, and she will be with us in just a little bit. Anthony, I want to thank you for those outstanding introductions. And I want to move quickly to the first question. I have so much to ask these incredible leaders and presidents, and especially about their deep commitment to gender equality. So I want to start right there, and I'll go to Dr. Adams-Gaston first, and this is for both presidents. What does gender equality mean to you?
So thank you so much. First, I'd like to thank, of course, all of you for allowing us to be here today. I think this is a very important opportunity. To Dr. Frederick, thank you for your strong leadership and your thoughtful leadership of Howard University, for Dr. Artis as she joins us just in the world of HBCUs, certainly one of our stars, and for all of the faculty and staff at the Howard University Center for Women, Gender, and Global Leadership for hosting this. What does gender equity mean to me? So I often tell people, I don't know anything but how to be a Black woman. When my mother was pregnant with me, she was clear I was going to be a Black child. And when I came out, I was going to be a woman. And so I live my life from the perspective of understanding that I have a place and a space in this world. And sometimes you got to elbow into that space, but you also need to have structures that allow us to really create the opportunity for people of all genders to have a space at the table. I'm one of these people who believes that you have a voice, use it. And so as you contribute to the environment, it begins to give the notion and the understanding that all voices matter. Shirley Chisholm once said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, pull up a folding chair. I do not believe you should take a back seat, but I also believe we have to work on, as institutions of higher education, because we can be the leaders here, we have to work on how we interact with one another and how we provide the doors that allow people to go through them. So, you know, in a world where there's not a lot of African-American females who are presidents of universities across the board, we need to make space for more. We know that we have, for example, at HBCUs, about 36% of the presidents are Black females, but across the nation, they're just 5%. So we need to do more, we need to do better, and we need to make sure that we give voice to everyone who is a party to this higher education initiative.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Frederick, what does gender equality mean to you?
Yeah, and I also want to say thanks for having me. I also want to take an opportunity to thank Dr. Adams-Gaston and to let her know that here at Howard, we're supportive and sending our prayers. Unfortunately, Norfolk State received a bomb threat this morning as well. And so I thank you for still insisting on being on this, despite the fact that you had more than ample reason to be attending to your campus in a different way. So we appreciate that very much.
Can I just thank you for that? Sure. Because this is a tough time in higher education, and I have an amazing team. And I was already here. I'm not on campus, so I was already where I was going to be. And I just will tell you, this is psychologically draining for all of us who experience this. And I know that you have experienced this at Howard University. And so I really thank you for your care, your consideration, but also the ways in which you can help, you have helped us to think about how we proceed. So thank you.
Sure, my pleasure. I think this is a great question. One of the things I would say is that when we get to a point where we don't need a center like this, would probably be one of the ways that we've known that we've achieved our ultimate goals. The reality is that on our campus, 74% of the students are women. Yet when I started, we had one permanent woman dean. And so those types of things, before we look outside externally, I think we have to look internally. There have been 17 of us men who have led the university, 10 white men, actually, more white men than Black men, which may be more a signal of the tenure of the Black male presidents. But the reality is that we haven't had a woman president. And so when I think of equality on this campus, I think that the leadership has to reflect that. We now have 10 women deans out of 14. Deans, and I think it's way more reflective now of what the campus is. And it's not just about quotas or numbers, but not only do we have the largest number of African-American female deans in the country at any one institution, but you are all excellent. That includes you, Dean Holley-Walker. So we've put in a process to make sure we can get there. The second thing that must happen is that every area of opportunity must have equal access. When I started as well, we conducted a study that demonstrated that women were less likely to be promoted than men. I'm happy to say in the last 2 years, that trend has been reversed. And we still have lots to do, but what I think is encouraging is the direction that we're heading in. And the other thing that we have to remember as well, as we look at these issues, and that's why the center's name includes gender, is that we recognize now that gender is non-binary as well. And our ability to accommodate a broader spectrum of individuals in our leadership on our campus, and to make sure that they have access and opportunity to succeed is also, I think, a key goal and objective of the activity that must take place here at Howard University.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Adams-Gaston, according to the American Council on Education, the percentage of minority college presidents has slowly increased over the last 30 years. Women of color, however, are most underrepresented in the presidency. So for instance, ACE notes that while racial minorities represented 17% of college presidents in 2017, women of color were only 5% of them. As one of the few women university presidents in the US, why do you think that higher education leadership is male dominated, and what can be done about it?
Well, let me say first, I come from an institution, Norfolk State University, that has had 7 presidents, 3 of which have been women, including myself. So we have a little bit of a different history at Norfolk State University. But if you go back and think about how higher education occurred in the nation, you know, it was male dominated and male dominated for a long, long time. Thinking about 1904 being the first time we had a Black female head of a higher education institution, that would be Mary McLeod Bethune. She had to create it, and she created it for women. And then there were almost 50 years before the next woman, Black woman, was president of a university, and that was at Bennett in 1950, I think 4-2, something close to that. So we have a history where we created these wonderful institutions of higher education, especially HBCUs, but they were led initially by males, white and Black, as Dr. Frederick talked about. And it took a long time for women to have a place in higher education. It took a long time for the focus to be on more equity in terms of positions of leadership in higher education. And we now are really making up for time. Because if you think about only 60 years ago, having, you know, the first Black woman for a higher education 4-year institution be a president, that's a sad commentary. And so we don't stay with the sad commentary. What we do is begin to look at ways forward. And I agree with Dr. Frederick that creating that center that you have is important. But what's more important is when we don't need those centers. So we bring in people who are excellent at the university. And, we were top heavy with males when I came here, but we had opportunities to do national searches. And for example, our provost is an African-American female. She actually created she was the founding chair of the Department of Gender and Race Studies at Alabama University. And she comes with quite a portfolio and deep knowledge of gender and gender changing the world in terms of gender and race. And then we did something that, really had not been done before, which is we had a national search, and our athletic director is an African-American female. And so we look at those things first in the Division I MEAC conference. So we look at those things and we say, we can make changes. We make changes based on excellence, but you have to have a different lens if you're going to look at what has transpired for people in the past and not do everything the way we've always done it. I had the great opportunity to have been mentored by a number of presidents before I got to Norfolk State University. And my last president was Dr. Michael Drake, who was the first African-American president of Ohio State, the Ohio State University. And I had been the vice president. He made me senior vice president. I continued to be on the cabinet, but I got mentorship from him about how you work at being a president and how you prepare for being a president. Those things matter. It also has to do with the skills that we bring to the table that are sometimes different in terms of how we solve problems, how we approach problems. Those things are needed. We need both and, but we understand that we're not going to get equity if we can't look broadly at what do people bring to the table, how do they bring it to the table, and what makes it most important that we have success. So those are things that I think if we can get people to really think about searches, to think about promotion of women in the academy, we can think about how we mentor individuals, if we can think about the ways in which we reach out and create opportunities that are not the standard opportunities, then we begin to make movement. If you look at searches, academic searches, one of the things you will see is more focus on diversity because the institutions need it. But that means that they have to look at, sometimes they have to look at things a little differently. They have to look at what the portfolio was and think about what does this person bring that is unique to the needs of this institution and will ensure that this institution continues to move forward.
Those are such important points, I think, especially about mentorship and really creating those pathways to the presidency. I have to say that working with Dr. Frederick, he does that with us. So not only has he created more deanships for women, but he also has taken the time, especially with me, and I know many others, to really mentor me in the direction of hopefully one day becoming a college president. I think that's really important. Dr. Frederick, Howard University is among the 11 academic institutions that have committed to the HeForShe campaign. Howard University became the first HBCU to commit to the HeForShe initiative in 2021. What influenced your decision to join the campaign?
First I have to say, Dr. Javaune, and one of the things that I always try to insist upon in my role as president is that I'm here to remove barriers for people to achieve and to move the institution the right way. It's not all about me, and it shouldn't be, and it shouldn't be coming from me as well, right? I think what's important is that we have professors like Dr. Javaune who are consistently looking for that opportunity. So when she presented that opportunity to me, it was a no-brainer to sign up. Now, it's also a delicate balance because with HeForShe, and I expressed this concern to her initially, that those are campaigns where I want to be sure we don't get confused about what the role of men are in terms of supporting women, especially women leadership. And sometimes that is, to be quite frank, staying out of the way. Sometimes it is promotion, but it's also about making sure that we listen probably more than we're heard. And I think it's important for us to be mindful of that. The reality is, though, the barriers that are set up in our society for women have primarily been set by the actions of men over time. And so you do need men to partner in terms of undoing those injustices. When you look at things like pay equality, if you have men in leadership who are making decisions about pay equity, then that's something that you need to make sure is not happening. Female professors at Howard get paid on the same level as male professors, and in significant numbers of instances actually earn more. So closing that gap is significant. I mean, it's a significant gap when you look across so many fields, and it has to be closed. So for me, joining meant that we were making a statement that we were going to bring this issue to the forefront on our campus. We were going to have open conversations about it so that people could engage and participate in a very, what I think is a very strong dialogue about what the direction is, and also in setting the goals, give us tangible things to look for in terms of how we get there, to make sure that those tangible things also are filtering down through the campus. So yes, we have a significant number of deans. We have to look at the chair level of leadership. And as Dr. Javaune has pointed out as well, we have to look within the cabinet as well. I think the board of directors, et cetera. So across the campus, we have to look at what that representation is and also what the impact of that representation is as well. So I think the key issues that we have to continue advocating for and making sure that we're advancing.
That's great. This question is for both of you, and I'll start with Dr. Adams-Gaston. What is being done at your university to promote gender equality and to prepare students to be gender conscious and commit to gender equality?
So there are a number of things. I think that one of the things that we have done, or one of the things that I did when I came in, is I created the Office of Institutional Equity. We did not have a person who was identified as our equity lead, our director, and we then put other people in place to really begin to look at the issues that are longstanding issues around equity and improving the environment for those around us. We also have some wonderful faculty who are doing great work with gender equity. We have individuals who are engaged in our interdisciplinary program, whose background is gender equity, and allow students to have that opportunity to have a program where they focus on gender equity. We also are looking at what are our policies, what are the ways that our policies get in the way, stand as barriers to our faculty, our staff, and our students, because we're really concerned about how do you make progress? We have, as most schools have, we have about 60% of our students, a little over 60% of our students who are women. And so when we're thinking about what are the programs that are available, and we have a number of programs that are available to our female students to help them in terms of their experience on campus, bonding together as women, moving forward, we are putting together a focus on wellness, and that will include diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we have a team that's working on that. I also commissioned a team to work on the LGBTIQA plus community, because we want to be inclusive. We don't want anybody to feel outside of the circle. And so we're looking for ways that we can promote the understanding that all voices matter, and we have to have a environment where people know that. We have what we call the culture of care at Norfolk State University, and in that culture of care, we expect everyone to look out for one another, everyone to support one another, and to listen and to learn new ways of hearing my need and how I need to be heard differently from your need and how you need to be heard. And so we're making progress, but I would say our focus is on excellence. We will always pick the absolute best candidate. And when they show up as women, we're also happy about that.
That's great. Thank you so much. Dr. Frederick, same question. What is being done at Howard University to promote gender equality and prepare students to be gender conscious and commit to gender equality?
Yeah, well, first thing I would start with is getting data. I think for a long while, that was not something that we focused on. And obviously it's something that we focus on now, making sure that we have the data to support any actions that we're going to take. And I think that we've seen that through some of the initiatives that we've had to set up. So I would say that that would be the first thing that I would mention. The second thing is, obviously with this center, we've had a renewed focus on direct activities such as this today to make sure that we do that. And I know that Dr. Javaune has a series of things planned, symposia, teachings and learnings around these issues, direct activities that students can participate in, which would bring them awareness. Because I think one of the first things we have to start with is awareness. I think sometimes there is that unconscious bias that we have that people may not recognize, and that we have to make sure we are addressing on a consistent basis. But sometimes you need data to support where you are, so you can kind of get the consciousness of people and their awareness before you start taking that action. I think the other thing that's important is among the staff, in particular with the Howard University Staff Organization. I think mobilizing that organization as well around these issues is important. A lot of times when we talk about activities, we talk about the faculty and the students, but the reality is that the workforce here at Howard represents significant connective tissue, and how they interact as well with students. Are they welcoming? Are they thoughtful about the things that must be done? Does impact ultimately what the student experiences and whether students are gender conscious, because if they are constantly not feeling as if they're heard or seen or recognized, especially as a result of gender issues, then that's going to be reflective regardless of the programming that we have if the staff don't treat them that way, and vice versa as well. We want to make sure that that happens. And then I think there have to be practical learnings as well in terms of how we interact, in terms of what the changing landscape is, and making sure that we are all conscientious about that. So for instance, on our search committees, as you know, we have unconscious bias training and cultural competency training. And part of that is also what has led to us having 10 woman deans, right? That having people be aware that we're going to conduct these things in such a way that they have to be very careful. They don't step on toes, or they don't do the types of things that we may have a concern about is absolutely critical. So I think there are a wide variety of things, and even more that I think we must do as we look at the direction that we're in. There's a lot of concern, for instance, about the lack of Black men in our application pool. And I keep reminding people that this should not be seen as a situation where we increase African-American males at the expense of African-American females. We can do both, and we have to look at it from that perspective. When you look at the percentages are widely different, but the reality is that we've been adding more African-American males to the incoming class, just that African-American females have been doing just as well, if not better. And so we continue to add more of them as well. And so I think that that's something that we need to embrace as well. Even sometimes the lens through which we look at some of those problems can make gender consciousness something that we don't quite appreciate for what it is. And trying to solve for some of those problems can cause, I would say accidental harm that we have to be conscious about as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. The discussions around gender many times become more complex when we know that the student body is 70% women. And so questions about how do we increase the number of men then become kind of fraught with a lot of these gender questions about what does real gender equality mean in a space where women are dominant in terms of the numbers in the student body, et cetera. I want to remind our audience, we have a great audience here. I want to remind them that if you have questions for our panel, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I will be moderating and monitoring those questions. So if you have questions for our outstanding panel, please put your questions in the Q&A and I will monitor some of those. I want to ask you, Dr. Adams-Gaston, considering the low number of Black women university presidents, what can institutions of higher education do to provide that equal opportunity? We've talked about that a little bit in terms of mentoring, et cetera, but do you think even as early as students who are in college, we should be talking to them about leadership programs, leadership initiatives, et cetera, to really get at this issue? Kind of where would you identify the pipeline issue in terms of women in leadership?
I certainly think that leadership and support for leadership starts early, and helping young women as they are going through the college years to understand their power and to learn to use their power. That's not an easy task, because while it is true that we are emerging as individuals who understand that we should have a place at the table, there are still some vestiges of behaviors and cultural norms that say, you should be sort of sidelined. You should take the back seat. You should let the young man or the male peer take the front seat. We need to help young women feel their personal power. It's interesting because, there wasn't a whole lot of talk about there are no women at the table when it was an all-male table. Now, that it's a largely female table in some places, the question is, well, where's the male space? I don't think it's an either or. I really don't. And I think we are making it a false dichotomy. It really is about the kind of needs that the institution has at the time and making sure that the person who comes forward is the best person for that position. Now, how we get there, if you think about graduate school programs, you think about professional school programs, if those individuals don't get an opportunity to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, to be mentored, to be supported, to have the opportunity to feel within themselves their personal power and to be acknowledged for that, then they're not going to be on a track that gets them to the place where they can be very successful in administration, being a dean of a law school, being a dean of a medical school, being a dean of a college of liberal arts, being ready to move to the next step, being a vice president somewhere, being a provost somewhere, allowing for those pathways and leadership programs that help those individuals prepare for the next phase. Now, the other part of that is the environment has to be ready. And this is the part that is very, very difficult. That's the part where we have to have tough conversations. We have to have cultural shifts. We have to have, we're doing culture training at Norfolk State University, so that people begin to let go and unfreeze some of their old behaviors and old ways of thinking about things, and really think about the person that's in front of you, not the representative label that you would normally give that person.
That's great. I think that's, something that we talk about a lot here at Howard, is how do we impact that culture change to allow the space to really be more accommodating to women leaders, because it's not just about those women coming into leadership and for women as students and staff, et cetera. I think that's really important. Dr. Frederick, taking this leadership helm that Howard has in terms of being the first in the HeForShe campaign and having this inaugural summit, what do you believe is the foundation to encouraging more HBCUs to do the work that you're doing in the Dr. Adams-Gaston and her institution are doing? What are the foundational pieces that are really needed for HBCUs to be more in the space of the HeForShe campaign, and also for gender equality and gender consciousness?
Yeah, I would say a lot of that work starts early. And I think one of the things that we have to be very conscientious about is that as a higher ed institution, the students who are coming in, we have to recognize that we're getting them from a K-12 system. And so sometimes, we're very focused on what we are going to do here now, but the reality is we are dealing with who's coming in, and based on how we deal with that, if we deal with it well or not, do we have collaborations with K-12? Because a lot of these issues are set in place earlier on. So I would first argue that we really need to have more connections with high schools and middle schools to see those changes, right? I remember my daughter prior to middle school was offered to be placed in an advanced math program at her school, and she refused to do it despite her aptitude for math. And so the school was concerned enough that they called me to ask me why, or if I could convince her to join the math club and, to take the advanced classes. So I went to her and I said, what's the problem? And she said, well, I'm not really crazy about working with boys, and the club only has boys now. And when you join them, what they do is they mess things up, and then you have to take it over and fix it. And I thought to myself, geez, at the age of 8, you have already figured out kind of what the big problem is here. But the reality is, so if that happens that early in a young girl's journey, the fact that she would shy away from an opportunity of advancement means that even when she gets to college, if we don't start correcting that then, and you do that for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, it's very hard to undo it at the college level. So that's the first thing I would say. I think K through 12, we as higher ed institutions need to have one. As you know, on our campus, we have a middle school. So we do get an opportunity there to impress upon, young boys and young girls how they should conduct themselves, and quite frankly, how some of this should work. I would say the second thing is that once we get folks here, I think for HBCUs in particular, we have to make them recognize what the history is. How did we get here in the first place? And then as they recognize how we get here in the first place, we have to also make sure that they have the data. We have to make them make sure that they recognize that while they have more representation by numbers, at the highest levels, they don't. And so we want them to aspire for that leadership. We want them to aspire to be there, but they must lead in the same ways that we would want anyone to lead, in terms of having integrity, fortitude, et cetera, dealing with data and facts, and making sure that they're making, shrewd decisions along the way so that they can do that. I think the other thing at HBCUs that's already in place that gives HBCUs, I think, an advantage is mentorship. Mentorship is one of the cornerstones of what we do well at HBCUs, and therefore giving students more of an opportunity to be exposed to that. I think it is extremely important that we do that as well, and that we continue to promote and to advance that activity in such a way that those students will aspire to that activity. But they must see people ahead of them as well, getting on that journey and getting off at destinations that show that the work has worked well. So I always tell the fact that we have 10 women deans, but the reality is that Not that I want to lose any of you, but the reality is that you must become provosts and presidents in order for the work to be done completely. So we have made advancements, but there's so much more that we must do. And I think as those young people see that as well, they can certainly promote that. And again, I think HBCUs are one of the best environments to make this work come to fruition because of the history that we've had in terms of how we've gone about conducting the work in the first place. So I think that there's a rich opportunity at HBCUs. And the last thing I'd say as well is I think there's an opportunity as well to collaborate well among HBCUs as well. That's the other power that I think we have. And Dr. Adams-Gaston and Norfolk State are part of the MEAC as an example. We've gotten to know each other well through that. And those things, bring you together in a way that you can see and hear different things. You can exchange information during times of crisis. You can congratulate each other during times of, when there's a bounty as well. And I think that also helps in terms of being able to expose our students and other HBCU students to different environments, because ultimately as well, we have an ecosystem that has some similar challenges. But what makes it work is when we go to bat for each other and we work together. I think that's the other thing HBCUs carry in this work that could be uniquely placed as an advantage as well.
That point about collaboration, I think, is so important, and the ability to really work together on these important initiatives like the HeForShe campaign. I see that Dr. Artis has joined us. I'm not sure, Dr. Artis, are you able to turn on your camera? Are you with us?
I am.
Yes. Hi.
Hello.
How are you? So
I'm very
Dr.
well,
Artis
thank you.
is here with us. She's, of course, as you heard in the introductions, the president of Benedict College in my old hometown of Columbia, South Carolina. Welcome, Dr. Artis, to the conversation.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I ask you an initial question now that you're here?
Listen, I would be happy. I'm
very
ducking
good.
a board meeting to be with you right now. Don't tell anybody since I just said it on tape.
We're glad that you snuck away from your board meeting to be with us during this conversation. It's been a really dynamic conversation so far with President Adams-Gaston and President Frederick. We want to start by asking you the first question that we asked of the panel, which is, what does gender equality mean to you?
It means that the population of women in positions of leadership, whether that's higher education or corporate and business, roughly reflect the population of our country. We have a wildly diverse array of women all over the country who really deserve an opportunity to demonstrate they can lead at the highest level. So representation matters, and that is my definition of equality.
That's great. We've talked a lot about the kind of lack of representation among college presidents, especially for Black women. And just wondering, considering that low number, what can institutions of higher education do to provide equal opportunity to women to become university presidents?
That is a wonderful question. And I will tell you that one of the things that keeps me up at night as a president of a higher education institution is trying to find ways to support women as they achieve successively higher levels within the organization. Exposure is a tremendous opportunity. We know that boards of trustees select presidents. Boards of trustees have to become very familiar with women as leaders. They have to see and experience them as leaders. So leaving and skipping out on my board meeting, leaving my highly competent women cabinet members in charge, allowing them to present to the board, to respond to questions, to demonstrate their tremendous capacity is but one way. Thinking about advancement opportunities internal to our institutions, are our search committees diverse? Do we have representation from around the college and university family, both male and female, on each of our search committees? People tend to hire people they know and are familiar with. So diversity on search committees is yet another way to assist and support. Professional development opportunities, being very purposeful about creating development opportunities for women leaders, being mindful of the roles that we assign women. Do not have them take the minutes at the meetings. They are meaningful participants, contributors. When we unintentionally, in most cases, delegate tasks that are less associated with leadership, more associated with support roles, we are sending a message. So it's important that we invite women to the table, not as the minute takers, but as important contributors. Finally, scheduling. Scheduling matters. We recognize that women bear the brunt of responsibilities for child rearing in many instances. It is a fact. And so scheduling meetings at 3 o'clock or at 8 o'clock in the morning when mothers have to pick up children and drop off children, that meeting can be equally effective at 1 p.m. But creating opportunities for women to participate means being thoughtful and mindful about any potential barriers to that full participation. And so I think, again, exposure, creating meaningful work assignments that allow women to demonstrate their skill sets, creating meaningful development pathways for women, allowing our environments to be culturally sensitive to the needs of women, some of whom may be mothers, and visibility are all very important ways that institutions can support the senior development of women and improve the ranks of women who are on that rung. Let's repair all the broken rungs every step of the way so that women have a fair opportunity to succeed and to lead.
That's fantastic. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the work of Benedict College, and particularly what is your university doing to promote gender equality and prepare students to be gender conscious and commit to gender equality?
So I think it's important. Visibility matters, representation matters. So we have taken a look across the institution to assess our student population. What do they look like? Where do they come from? What is our percentage? So we are really in a minority among HBCUs in that we're 57, 43%, 57 female, 43 male, closer to that 50% breakdown than we do see in typical institutions, which are closer to 2/3 females. So we're a little bit unique in that regard. But as I said at the outset, equality means that we have equal representation across the institution. So whether it's athletics and making sure that we have equitable representation among our coaching staff, our training staff, our development staff are all ways that we try to amplify women in multiple roles. My cabinet, I'm ashamed to say, but I'm not ashamed at all. Is comprised of a majority of high functioning women who are very visible around the institution, who manage things that are typically associated with our male counterparts. They participate actively in the finance and budgeting processes. They oversee contracts and building construction and facilities in ways that are typically inconsistent. So through increased visibility in myriad roles, allowing women to demonstrate their leadership prowess across the institution and be very visible with our students. One of the things people always ask me is, what are you most proud of? I was proud to take the oath of office as the president of this institution in front of my daughter so that she can see what she can be. So women in visible leadership roles around the institution certainly stimulates our young women who are on the campus to understand what they can yet achieve and what they can be through role modeling more than anything else.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to ask the next question of the entire panel, and I'll start with President Adams-Gaston. What are some actionable steps for your university to be involved in the HBCU Alliance to promote the HeForShe campaign on your campus and within the Black community?
So one of the first things we would like to put out there is we're happy to host a HeForShe event on campus at Norfolk State University. I think we want to speak loud and clear that we want to be engaged in that alliance. And then I think it is the things that we do on an ongoing basis. I think the points about being a role model and having multiple role models, as I talked about, a number of our cabinet members who are now women, where we did not have those individuals in those spaces, that then keeps the focus on what HeForShe stands for and that alliance moving forward. And then I think that we here at the university do an annual review of our university policies, particularly focused now on ensuring and promoting gender equity. And the reason for that is it just hasn't been there. People assumed they would, get women into the pipeline just by doing the things we've always done. And we know that's not true. So really doing that kind of work that I think reflects the HeForShe Alliance. And then I have regular meetings with our student organizations and with our student leaders across the board, and then just students who want to come and visit with the president. That's important for male and female students to see a leader that is a president who's an African-American woman and reflects for them, for the women, what they can be, reflects for the men, what they can be, but also how they can think about leadership differently. So those kind of things I think are really important. And it gives us the opportunity to think about retooling the HBCU culture and mindset and thinking about the issues of overcoming oppression that happens for women and thinking about the importance of mentoring and support systems and thinking about the collaboration that Dr. Frederick talked about a little bit earlier. One of the things that is a great demonstration of that is when COVID-19 hit, we had the opportunity to do some work together. Actually, as we were doing testing and we were involved in the JUST project, Dr. Frederick had made accommodation for Norfolk State University to send our samples to a lab that they set up for the express purpose of dealing with COVID-19. We couldn't have made it if we didn't have that kind of collaboration. So those things matter. And for us working together and for our teams to see us working together, and our teams to see us working together with Dr. Artis and the work that she does, it just matters what leadership looks like and what leadership does to shape our future.
Yeah, those were very powerful examples, I think, of the ways that HBCUs can collaborate in this space and also on other matters like the importance of kind of preventing COVID-19 on our campuses. Dr. Frederick, same question for you, and I know you've talked a little bit about this already, but what can we do to create more alliance between HBCUs to promote the HeForShe campaign on our campuses, but also within the Black community in general?
You know, one of the things that I have really been interested in is getting more presidents to our campus. We started the HBCU Leadership Forum primarily for the presidents and the chairs of the boards. And as you know, President Artis was saying, and also President Adams-Gaston, one of the things that I think is important is for us to see each other for who we are and to engage, and also for other individuals to see us. I mean, I had the opportunity now, I think I've given 3 former HBCU presidents honorary degrees as an example, because I think we have to lift up the work that we all are doing and make sure it's clear. I apologize, in a hotel room here, the phone is going off. I'll grab that in a second.
Text me when with you.
But I think it's important for us to see that and to make sure that, you know, we are going in a certain direction, that we are promoting the work of one another as well. And I think having more HBCU presidents on our campus speaking to our students is one way to do that. We have a Mordecai Wyatt Johnson speaker series that we're going to reinitiate. And what I'm going to do with that series is to actually invite other presidents from all over the country, but including HBCU presidents, to speak. And I think, as you heard in the statistics earlier from President Adams-Gaston, there are more HBCU women presidents by percentage, probably of any of the genres in the presidency outside of single-sex institutions. And so that's something that we need to promote. We need to have people see more of them. And then also at that next level with the cabinet, I think collaborating around those activities. So another example is you look at our endowments and who are the chief investment officers and their staffs. And while we may have different sizes of endowments, I think getting them together to collaborate and to discuss tactics around those things also helps promote that type of activity. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think. What Dr. Dawani is going to build out here as well is going to look at that process as well, right? How can we help each other win? Overall, we want all our institutions to be successful, but in doing so, we can achieve that secondary objective of making sure that we also are promoting each other in terms of this activity, and making sure our leaders in general across the board are stronger for it, because they've been interacting with one another as well.
Absolutely. The idea that we can all be stronger together, I think, in having those opportunities, especially for the leaders together, I think is so important. Dr. Artis, same question. What are some actionable steps for your university to be involved in the HBCU Alliance to promote the HeForShe campaign on your campus and within the Black community?
You know, I think Dr. Frederick has really articulated it incredibly well. The reality is we have to be the example. The proportional representation of women as presidents and CEOs in the HBCU space should be an exemplar for all of our predominantly white institutional peers outside, as he pointed out, our single-sex institutions. I think we have something to say. As HBCUs, I think we have something to say about wraparound services and student support. I think we have something to say about culturally competent education. I think we have something to say on this new /diversity, let's talk about equity initiative. And so this is no different. We are exemplars in this battle, if you will, for equality. And I think Wayne has, Dr. Frederick, having given us voice today, having engaged two sister presidents in this conversation, his having served as a very visible ally in this effort, the first HBCU to stand and say unequivocally, HeForShe is incredibly valuable to us. So certainly want to thank him and publicly state that Benedict College stands with you, and whatever we can do to ensure gender parity and equity, we stand ready to do so. I have a vested interest in the matter. And so allies are important. In the words of Joe Biden, it's on us. And I think Wayne has really stood up very loudly and proudly and said that, and I'm very appreciative.
That's great. We are going to move to our students in just a second, but I want to give each one of our presidents, we have one question in the chat, which I think we can take now instead of waiting for the Q&A, because it really relates to many of the topics that we've been covering up to this point. So the question, one of the audience questions is, research informs us that fewer than 25% of HBCUs have LGBTQIA student organizations, and only 3 as of 2018 have established resource centers for LGBTQIA identifying students. In the lens of this conversation, what are your university student affairs teams doing to build safe and brave spaces for queer communities? I think it's such an important question, because we know that gender is not binary, and that it's important for us to recognize the LGBTQIA community. So what are some things that you're doing on your campus to do that and to build that into this conversation about gender?
You know, I will just offer that we are counting. Data matters and representation matters, as I've just indicated. So we are in the process of our SACS decennial review. That is our regional accreditor decennial review. And as we developed out our QEP, we started looking at our student demographic and very clearly recognized this non-binary nature of our student body. So by counting, by reporting, by giving our students an opportunity to declare who they are and how they wish to be recognized on our campus. So for every effort, if we're looking at student success measures, if we're looking at graduation rates, if we're looking at persistence and completion, we're looking at it across all of those sectors. So just as we will look at our Black students versus our white students versus our Hispanic students, we're also looking not just at male, female, but our non-binary designations. And so for us, it's a very intentional effort of acknowledging differences, of counting differences, of representing the extent to which our students are quite diverse. We know that approximately, based on surveying that we did, nearly 30% of our students identify as non-binary. That is a significant proportion of our student body. We have to acknowledge and recognize them as such, and create an environment within which they feel safe, where they're able to express themselves and engage fully as members of this learning community. And so I think through some of that, through just acknowledgement and documenting the number of students who choose to define themselves in that way, and affording the freedom to say other. I'm not male, I'm not female, I'm other, I think gives voice to an issue that's very, very important. It's sweeping the nation. And as always, HBCUs can be at the forefront.
Yes, very important. Dr. Adams-Gaston?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we have a task force, and that task force includes students, faculty, staff, and administrators. And we do that because, then that's the LGBTIQA plus. And we do that because we want the voices of individuals from all levels to help us resolve this problem. Counting matters, numbers matter, and then action. And so we're at the point where we're really looking at what's happening in the classrooms in this issue, what's happening in residence halls, what's happening on the campus. We want the inclusivity to be the leader for our institution. And so equity is how you get that sense of inclusivity. Inclusivity is you've got to have people know that they have a voice. And so we're already in process, working with the student organizations as well as this task force that I have asked to really address this issue and make sure we make serious and fast movement forward.
Very good. Dr. Frederick?
Yeah, I think like many of these things that need to change, a lot of the impetus does come from student activity. We had a student on our board of trustees who was identified as a gay male, and he was very, I would say, proactive in trying to illuminate the issue of us promoting that self-identification. And so he approached me maybe my first year of my presidency about having a lavender fund celebration at homecoming. And, I would say almost flippantly said yes, didn't see why it would even be an issue and why it would be a concern. And it was interesting because that led to my opening of my eyes. I attended the first one. We've supported, I've told them any money they raise, I will match. And we've done that for the past, I believe we've done it now for 6 or 7 years. It's getting to the point now where I'm going to be broke because they're raising so much money doing it. But it was illuminating when I got there. I met 2 gentlemen from the 70s who identified as gay males. And they said that, when they were in school at Howard, especially around homecoming, it was difficult because there was not a place for them to celebrate or to participate in activities and being their entire self. And they had tears in their eye to see that the Howard president would attend such an activity. And I was really taken aback by that. I was really moved, but it also said to me that there was so much more that we had to do. And so we've gone about a process since then. And, and some of the issues are tactical things that you can do, such as we've tried to have gender neutral restrooms in every building, as an example, and trying to make sure that we have, sanitary products for everyone, a variety of tactical things, but then there's strategic things. And in a couple of weeks, I believe in 2 to 3 weeks, we'll open our intercultural center, which will house resources for that community as well. I think the other thing I want to be clear about is we also have to make sure that we're educating everyone. And I think that that's one of the bigger challenges. I would love to see us have a faculty and staff orientation every year, just about who our students are, because it's changing every time. And I think as we come back in the fall, it's good to get a reorientation around that. I look at my 17-year-old or my 15-year-old, and these are issues that they are very comfortable with. They understand them way more than I do, and they're often schooling me about it. And I think we have to have a willingness as administrators to be educated about it. And so hearing from that community on an ongoing basis about the changes, about the experiences that they're having, so that we can build the appropriate environment for them, I think is key. And that's one of the things that we've been trying to do in our student affairs shop at the university.
Very good. Now I want to offer each of our presidents an opportunity to just give a few closing remarks about this panel and about the HeForShe campaign and the work of gender equality on their campuses. And we'll start with Dr. Artis.
Thank you very much. And I think thank you to Wayne Frederick for taking the initiative to give voice to this issue and for engaging your sister presidents in the conversation. There are precious few things that would make me duck out on a board meeting because I'm sort of interested in retaining my employment. But this issue is so critically important to me personally and professionally that I thought it appropriate to slip away for just a few moments. I think HeForShe speaks volumes. We need allies in this work. We need people who are willing to amplify the voices of women as leaders and show all of the diversity and the richness and complexity and skill sets of women who aspire to be leaders. We are not necessarily better, we're just different. And institutional contexts call for different leaders at different times. And so a willingness to recognize that, to amplify that, and to give voice is something that's very, very important and near and dear to me. I want to extend my sincere thanks to my colleague, Wayne Frederick, and to my lovely colleague, Dr. Javaune Adams-Gaston. It is always a privilege to share a stage with the two of you. Godspeed.
Wonderful. Dr. Adams-Gaston.
Well, thank you. And I would echo everything that President Artis has said. I will start by saying this is difficult because, as you know, we have a bomb threat. And I, as I said, was off campus doing this remotely, and because I have a meeting right after this. But I have a wonderful team, and they've kept me up to date, and we've been focusing on the safety of the school. But as we continue to get these threats across the nation, we're trying to figure out ways to keep moving our endeavor without the scarring that comes from the mental health problem that having people anxious always makes. Having said that, what I will say is this is important. This is important work that has to be done as we think about how we continue the endeavor. We think about why it is important that the HeForShe movement really has us be reflective of what we do and introspective, and then moving forward. You know, when we think about how we model our service role models, how we work on the suppression issue, how we have the things that we've talked about in terms of mentoring and supporting, but also how we teach individuals to support their determination to succeed. And that is sometimes lost along the way, that inside of individuals is this incredible desire to succeed, and how we help them move that forward, no matter what their label is what this is really about. And the collaborations between these universities. I am honored to be, sharing this time with Dr. Frederick and Dr. Artis, presidents of great institutions with great histories, and to be able to say Norfolk State University continues to be a place where we look at the individual and we develop that individual, and we say, we see the future in you. We mean that we're able to support what it takes for your development of your future. So I appreciate this time. It's been really important to me.
It really has. Dr. Frederick will give you the last word.
So I owe my sister presidents a huge vote of gratitude because when Dr. Dawani approached me about this, I mentioned the two of them, and I had I didn't have to go anywhere else on my list, and they both accepted, despite the fact that they had such challenging schedules. And I think that speaks to their commitment as well to collaborating and to seeing this. I think the biggest thing that has happened this morning that I hope everyone will take away is just the fact that their presence of what they do and how well they do it is something that would be inspiring for others. The support that I lend here, I lend especially because of my experience with my 15-year-old daughter, who in many ways is, I think not just a big advocate around these issues, but always points out to me anytime I fall short in any way, shape, or form. So if I attend too many of my son's soccer games and I'm not at her volleyball game, she makes it very clear that I need to step up. So I could hear her looking at this recording and criticizing anything that she felt I said that wasn't within bounds. So I look forward to that conversation. And I look forward to actually bringing both of you to campus, because ultimately, I think, as has been said, the exposure, people seeing the collaboration, I think, are the important things that we have to continue to put forward. And so I really appreciate both of you, Dr. Adams-Gaston. I hope that your campus stays safe. You're right, this is frustrating what's been taking place nationally, but I think our resilience is the best answer to what's been taking place. And to Dr. Artis, I think your board is wise enough to know that they don't need to lose you anytime soon. And so thanks again for taking the opportunity to join us. So you guys take care and have a pleasant weekend.
Thank you to our distinguished panel of presidents. I want to thank Dr. Roslyn Artis, Dr. Javaune Adams-Gaston, and Dr. Wayne Frederick for being with us today and showing their tremendous support for the HeForShe campaign and for Howard University Center for Women, Gender, and Global Leadership. We are going to move to their students. We are going to see the reflection of the incredible leadership of these three presidents by talking to the student government presidents from Howard University, from Norfolk State University, and from Benedict College. So now I would like to introduce Kylie Burke, who is the Howard University Student Association president. I'd also like to introduce Jalen Drury, who is the Norfolk State University Student Government Association. I'm especially thankful, Jalen, that you could be here with us, knowing that you've been on shelter in place earlier today. Grateful for your participation. And to Kennedy Bird, the president of the Benedict College Student Association. Thank you so much, Kennedy, for being here with us today. So Kennedy, Kylie, Jalen, we are just excited about your leadership. I think so much of what we just heard from the university presidents was the importance of starting leadership early, right? Of having training for leaders early. And you know the difficult politics of your campuses and what it means to really lead in an environment like this. So I want to ask you, how do you imagine a gender equal campus? What does that mean to you to have a campus that really resonates with the idea of gender equality? And we'll start with Kylie.
Thank you so much. And I just first want to say, I think it's been a wonderful conversation and an incredible way to start this summit series. And I, of course, want to thank the center. Dr. Javaune and I have been able to work together a lot this academic year. So it means a lot to be here and to have the student body presidents featured as part of the panel as well. But I think a lot of the points that were touched on earlier indicate what a gender equal campus would look like. I think for Howard, it's really important to feel seen, not just physically on campus with leadership, but also that your identities are represented in university-wide policy initiatives as well. I tell students all the time, right now, Howard student leadership looks entirely different from when I was a freshman. Almost all of the college or school council presidents were men when I was a freshman. The HUSA president was a man when I was a freshman. And that's despite the heavily female populated campus. And now every principal position at the undergraduate and graduate level are all held by women on campus right now, whether that's in the Senate, in executive student government, over at the law center, law school as well. So that's really encouraging. And I've had students stop me and ask, how did you get involved? And it was kind of the story that a lot of us relate to, of kind of wanting to show people what was possible on campus, that women can be a leading voice on campus and should be a leading voice on campus. So I think that's what it comes down to, feeling supported and represented, again, not just in the physical leaders that we have, but also when you're reading in HU communication, which is sort of how Howard disseminates large scale information, you feel like your identities and the groups that you belong to weren't just included in the information, but they were thought of throughout the decision-making process. And I think that makes a profound impact when you feel connected to those decisions.
I think that's really true. I'm really proud of my Student Bar Association president here at Howard Law School. Drew Lewis is an amazing student leader here at the law school. So that's an incredibly important point, that leadership, even at the student level, to see that representation and to see it reflect the overall student body is important to the overall campus climate and what we're doing on these issues. Jalen, I'll turn to you, and this is incredible because this is the HeForShe campaign. So it really is about men as allies in the fight for gender equality. So talk to me a little bit about what your vision is of a gender equal campus at Norfolk State.
Absolutely. Well, good morning, everyone. Excuse me. It has been a long morning, as you can imagine. Like my university president, Dr. Adams-Gaston stated, but I'm happy to be a part of this important conversation with you all this morning. Like my sister president said, it is so important for students on all of our campus to feel seen, right, on and heard on every level, in the classroom, outside of the classroom, through policy, through events held on campus. When I imagine a more gender equal campus, I think of more people going to support the women's basketball team, more people going to support the women's sports on campus and not just the male sports like we are so used to, right? So it's more than just changing the names on bathrooms. It's through the policies, it's through the practices, it's through the curriculums in the classrooms, the way that professors teach in the classrooms, and also the way that we promote majors as well. I think, when it comes to the STEM field, we're used to seeing a male-dominated face on the front of that, but also showing that women can be part of that field as well, computer science and engineering and math and technology. So it's about representation, it's about feeling seen, and it's about inputting it into policy as well.
That's great. I want to turn to Kennedy and ask the same question about Benedict, where you have wonderful woman president, and Dr. Artis. What do you see as a gender equal campus? What does that mean to you?
When I think of a gender equal campus, I can't help but first, like you said, acknowledge my wonderful president, Dr. Roslyn Artis, and all that she has done to not only incorporate an equal field, but also just reform the college as a whole. So I thank her first. And, when I think of how it is important to her, I see that reflected in, like she mentioned her cabin and also, SGA. So I thank her for being a woman of distinction. And I think it's important to, include the students in our image of looking for gender equality, because when you're trying to increase something of the such, you have to keep in mind who you're doing it for. So when it comes to, just trying to provide support, you have to be first open to hearing what it is that the students feel like they need. I stay in a dorm on campus, so I know that a great example of gender equality that I have seen personally reflected is, was mentioned earlier, just the provision of providing, like sanitary napkins or, like tissue and detergent. Like, it's really the small things that go a long way when it comes to making sure that you're there for the students. And another example is in like my speech classes, we were talking about, for example, like what we can do to make our international students feel more seen. And, right off the top of our heads, maybe we can do, include cuisine day, like in the CAF, and make sure that they feel like we're actually caring and taking initiative when it comes to trying to learn their cultures. And I feel like the same thing can be done when it comes to trying to make sure that everyone on campus feels like that the equality is there. Last, I would like to say that maybe there's more that we can do as leaders on our campuses when it comes to collaborating and coming together and seeing what we can do to initiate change over our entire campuses. So, after we're done talking, I'll definitely drop my information in the chat box, and whoever is, open to, opening that conversation to talk about what we can do better and how we can initiate change over a larger field, then I would definitely be open to talking about that.
That's fantastic. I want to remind our audience, we have a wonderful audience with us, that if you have questions for our student leaders, for our student presidents, you can drop those in the Q&A and I'll be monitoring them and have a chance to ask the panel your questions. So I want to ask the student body presidents next, what do you think are the one or two most pressing issues related to gender equality on your campus? We can start with Kylie again.
Wonderful. I think firstly, we need to do a better job as the former student body president just mentioned, collaborating and I think connecting and using the resources that we have to make sure that the underrepresented groups and populations have the financial support that they need to do the programming that they have. And also encouraging those students on Howard's campus, we have Cascade, which is a historic LGBTQ+ organization for HBCUs that is featured on other campuses as well. But for the past 2 years, at least, we've had a Cascade leadership member also in Houston at the executive level. So it's encouraging them to run for leadership positions outside of their direct communities. I think that's really important as well. And across the board, I think there's a responsibility. If you're familiar with a Howard intro, it's like the go-to introduction phrase for any Howard student. And for the last couple of years, we've been trying to encourage students, incorporate your pronouns into that introduction, just normalize letting people know. And if you're comfortable sharing your pronouns and you physically present the way of your pronouns, your courage and leadership in using pronouns may help someone else who's identifying outside of what someone may visually expect them to be. And so really trying to have a cultural shift on campus, and that takes everyone, from university leadership down to incoming freshmen. And I think there's been a positive trend in that culture on campus, but as always, and with any gender inclusivity issue, there's more work to be done.
Very good. Jalen, what do you see as the most pressing issues related to gender equality on your campus?
Like I mentioned earlier, I definitely think the representation, I definitely think is the most pressing issue when it comes to gender equality. I think representation is very important. It's actually something that when I ran for SGA president, it was important for me to choose a running mate that was a female, because I believe that every male has to have a female beside them in order to lead, right? You have to have that different way of thinking when you're making important decisions for the university and for the campus. So I think representation is very important, but I think we're headed in the right direction. Our president is a wonderful woman, and she leads remarkably. And I think also having a female provost and vice president of academic affairs and female director of housing, like all of those things are so important on a college campus, specifically HBCU campus, because representation is very important. And students have to feel and have to see that anything is possible and they could be in those seats one day. So
Kennedy, what are the most pressing issues about gender equality on your campus?
I have to agree with both Kylie and Jalen when it comes to just presenting a space where people feel comfortable, expressing their needs. And also, when it comes to, like Kylie said, the pronouns, like I feel like if you create a space where people feel comfortable, even if you do present as your pronouns, it would open up a space in which people feel, comfortable being expressatory about it. And also, like Jalen said in his previous statement, just showing up, for, the women's sports, softball and girls basketball. And I feel like that is something that our campus has really, as of lately, been good about promoting, just making sure that just as you were there for all the football games and the boy basketball games, that you also extend your support to the women as well. So.
Right. I want to ask you one final question that I asked the presidents, which is how can we, for you as HBCU student leadership, how do we build collaboration between HBCUs to promote the values and ideas surrounding the HeForShe campaign? What are some ideas for us to collaborate together? I'll start with Kylie.
Absolutely. I think events like this are crucially important and can't be understated, especially highlighting the HBCU female university presidents that we have. I can't remember the exact statistics at the beginning of the call, but I know that we have a higher percentage of women leadership in HBCUs compared to the non-HBCU universities across the country. So I think doing a better job at highlighting that and featuring that and collaborating to allow university presidents and student body presidents to serve in capacities like this and show us, I think you mentioned a reflection of the leadership from the top down, I think is a nice way of featuring it as well. And social media campaigns are incredibly impactful as well. I remember as a freshman, we did #HUStands against sexual assault, and that was a huge campaign that featured student leaders and university leadership across campus. So maybe revisiting something like that of just the signage and a physical reminder on campus. But these events, whether virtual or hopefully in person in the near future, I think also can make a real impact.
Great. Jalen, you're up next.
All right, so I would like to second what my sister president said about using social media. We have to kind of meet students where they are, and students are on social media, and just also having a conversation. I think this forum right here, this event, this summit is so important, and to continue to hold these spaces so we can have the conversation, and also inviting students into the room. I always let administration know here at my institution that it's always important to have students part of the conversation, not just student leadership, but the students that are not part of the leadership on campus, but the people that's not in the bubble, right? So you have to invite everyone to be part of the conversation, so that way the conversation is happening. So
That's great. Kennedy.
I agree 100% with Kylie and Jalen, just making sure that students are part of the conversation. And maybe if we had the opportunity to create a seminar that is, student run, maybe they would feel more comfortable with just being open about what it is that they need and the things that we could do better to incorporate gender equality throughout, the small things, because it's always the things that you never think, the things that you don't second guess that probably need the most reformation. So I think if we just continue to be open and, open-minded, then we can initiate change.
I love that. I can't tell you how important it is for us to be here on a day like today. It's a historic moment for Black women in the United States today, as President Biden has just announced that he is nominating Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the United States Supreme Court. She will hopefully be confirmed as she's highly qualified and will be the first Black woman to serve on the US Supreme Court. I can't think of a more important and incredible day to have this summit. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Javaune to lead us in this final segment. Thank you so much, Kylie, Jalen, Kennedy. That was incredible. It's wonderful to see such outstanding leadership at our historically Black colleges and universities. You are all outstanding examples of what it means to be leaders in training who will come into leadership in our HBCUs at even higher levels than you are right now. I'm just very proud of each and every one of you and thankful and grateful for your leadership on our campuses. Dr. Javaune.
Thank you very much, Dean Holley-Walker. Thank you so much for this wonderful moderation. And I would like to thank the President, President Javaune Adams-Gaston, President Wayne Frederick, and President Clark Artis for taking time in their busy schedules to be with us this day. And of course, we couldn't have had such a wonderful discussion without our student leaders, Kylie Beck from Howard University, Kennedy, and Jalen from Norfolk State. So thank you all for bringing such wonderful discourse onto the discussion. And we are looking forward to having you during our next event. We wouldn't have had this occasion without the support from my team at the Center for Women, Gender, and Global Leadership. And I thank you all. With special thanks to UN Women team also for being with us here and for working with us throughout the journey to where we are today. And the most important thanks goes to our audience. Thank you for joining us. This is the beginning of many other things we'll be doing at the Center for Women, Gender, and Global Leadership. So I encourage you to visit our website, check out our social media handles, follow us for exciting events that will be happening. And we hope that we'll see you soon in the virtual Howard University. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend and please stay safe.